this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. We're back again with the pandemic project. This one is the equivalent of a reel in a bag, but it actually was a reel in a box. This one is a Shimano. It's the 1000 Symetre, and a fellow got started on this one, got in over his head and asked me if I can help. The complaint is the anti-reverse is not working. They started by taking the nut off to loosen the rotor, ran into this little cross member or cross pin here on the axle shaft, and kind of realized they were in over their head. They did send me the nut that ties down, or the screw that ties down the nut, but let's show you how to take this off. Let's go inspect that anti-reverse, try and figure out what's going on there. Let's put this reel back together after a service. So you start by removing the handle on these, and anytime you see that you have a cross pin in there, you know you have to remove the body first to get to that. So the body normally would be a piece that can be removed without removing that rotor first. If you see just the click rotor and a plastic shim washer on top of that, then chances are you can remove the rotor without removing the body. But in this case, it's a service, so we're going to do it all anyway. There's 3 side plate screws that I can tell. There may be a 4th later. Let's take that off, and while we're taking that off, you can notice that I'm wearing a protective glove on my non-working hand. It's to keep the real contaminants off of there, greases and the like. I'd like to wear one on my working hand, but I've found that it's pretty much impossible. I just don't have a good feel for what it is that I'm doing with the glove on, and I don't use it as a result, but I try to limit the cleaning and that exposure to my left hand in this case as a result. So we have a Shimano. This is a basic rear lever drag reel. It's a nice reel, and in this case I guess we have a problem where it's not stopping backwards. Those 3 screws will remove the side case. Should remove the side case. There we go. And then we can get into the removal of the axle, and the removal of the axle is by taking this clip out here. And this has got a worm drive in it. It's a nice little setup here. The main gear drives the pinion gear, and the pinion gear drives the worm, which makes this go up and down. That worm gear is very similar to a worm gear on a level wind reel, conventional. So for example, an Abu Ambassador, for example, uses the same kind of a worm gear setup. Okay, we took the little hold down screw there. Now we should have a forked clamp that comes up. Pull that forked clamp. Notice the orientation on it. There's 2 sides. One side goes deep and actually has a little washer that's going to sit inside there on that pawl, and then the other side is flat. So when you go to reinstall, notice that your pawl is here that rides on the worm gear, and now we can take that axle shaft off like that. The nut is already off. Now we can remove the carrier, and let's go find out what's going on with that anti-reverse. So this is an old school anti-reverse. It has a sawtooth configuration under the spool, so it's not an instant anti-reverse. And it looks like there's a collar here that came undone because there's a spring in here. That spring is going to have to sit inside that notch, I believe, of the collar. And I'm going to have to go get a schematic just to confirm that. But you'll see that there's a slot here on this plastic carrier, and we have a spring over here, and I think that that's got to come up top. So let's pull that out and give it a try here. See what we can do. I think what we have to do here before we do much is we want to take that whole pinion gear assembly out. So let's grab a Phillips head screwdriver. This is a good time to say take pictures. There's schematics out there for this reel. If I need to, and I really get in trouble, I'll go to the schematic. But for now, take pictures along the way. That'll tell you how you've put in or taken off particular assemblies. Like this one, you have a spring that's resting against the side here and grabs the back of this. So you want to make sure that you have that spring set. A good way to do that is just take it off and then put it back, kind of the way it belongs. I'm going to rest that in a corner of the bucket so that I know both pieces are there. Now we can take the carrier off. And this is the question here, is how does this spring, which is an eccentric spring, connect? Because that's what's not driving the anti-reverse at the moment. My first inclination says that it's just going to rest in that cavity there, like that. So we're going to just go ahead and see if we can't put it back that way. And we got to figure out which way that spring sits on this. It's going to sit on the smaller portion here. I think that's what we have to do first. Get that spring through. The spring onto the collar here. There's a little circlet that would go on, like that. It holds. Push that all the way up. We're going to grab it, and we're thinking that's how it goes because it's a perfect fit, isn't it? That just fits right in that little slot there. That's what became detached on this. So let's go ahead and put that back in then. Oops. Oops is never a good word in fishing reel repair. So we're just going to put that off to the side for a moment, because as long as I have this out, let's take those two screws out and pull that piece there, clean that up. This is a little clamp that holds the pinion assembly, and I'm going to leave this right on the table because we're going to pull that whole thing out. And we're just going to clean all of this up. It's got some original greases on there, so let's get that off. Just use a paper towel. You can use a hard brush as well. Clean those channels out. Use a toothbrush. If you don't have one of these, toothbrush is fine. Let's go reload this with some fishing reel grease. I'm going to use Penn Precision Reel Grease for that. I'm going to put oil onto the bearing. Use fishing reel oil for that. Please use fishing reel oils and greases on fishing reels. Just going to lay that down for a moment. There's just a little bit of cleanup we'll do in here. Going to go grab the cotton swab, get some of the old grease off. Now oil the back bearing. Use the blue grease on the worm drive. And then we can reinstall the pinion gear. Make sure that the bearing gets seated properly. We come back in with our little carrier. Have the carrier upside down. Fortunately for me, in this situation, they have two holes that are not equally opposing, so it was hard to mess that up. And those of you that know me know that this is the fun part of the exercise here with the screws going back in. centering pin on this side. Long screw. So the collar's back on. Before we go much further, we want to put the orientation up on this one now. And I believe that collar's got to go over here so that it matches this side. We're going to have to go to the schematic and see on that one. Then we can have the anti-reverse spring. Anti-reverse arm. The spring needs to go on the other side of the arm. There we go. Now we got the spring functioning properly. You can tie that spring down. Now we can put that rotor back in. We'll be able to tell whether we have an anti-reverse or not. Sometimes there's an assortment there on the that little plastic lever. There's a couple of different posts there. So you just need to make sure it's right. We have the anti-reverse, but I think it's on the wrong side of the peg. So let's go back and swap that over. So I believe it belongs on this side of it, like that. So it's kind of hard to do without the schematic, but eventually it's trial and error. It also looks like it had an indentation there for it. Oh, we got a storm going out there. Now we got it. There you go. So that's what it was. The spring came out. And Bill, that was an easy fix, relatively speaking. It was the override. Okay, let's continue just with the cleanup on this one. We want to take care to get the old grease off of this one. Go ahead and put that back together. Some new grease onto the piece there. We've already greased our pinion gear. We've already greased the worm gear. We can reinstall the main gear now. And then we can reinstall our, actually we can put this in. This came out without the shaft, so we can put that back in. Make sure that the shaft is clean. Put a little additional grease on here. Bring that through. Bring it through the carrier for the worm gear. Line up your two sides so you can get that clip in. Remember, we have that little washer here for the pawl. So this is a clip and a pawl retainer. We'll put a drop of oil on that pawl just for fun. Remember that the downside was the one that was the U cavity. Alright, I thought I would change over to a little bit more of a close-up. We have this piece that is going to hold on your axle shaft. The U side goes down. Remember, we had that little washer in here for the pawl, and I put a drop of oil on the pawl. And then you just want to hook in. Once you have it set, then you can flip it over. Use my centering pin to push it down. And then we can lock it in with that screw. And this is one of those little screws that I have trouble with, so put a little bit of grease on there. Grab my screwdriver. See if I can't get the grease to hold the screw while I try and put it in. Okay, pretty much have that set now. Tighten the last little bit down here. So we have our carrier, we have our pawl behind that, we have a drop of oil in there, we have the washer, we've greased up the gears, we've oiled the bearings, main gear goes in. One more bearing on the side plate here, and I'll oil that up again. Now we can flip that side plate over. You have 3 external screws. They're easy to identify, they're gold. Let's grab our... as best I can tell, Bill didn't send me his spool, so but that's okay. We will leave that as it is for a moment. We'll make sure that when we put the handle on, we have that anti-reverse going. And we'll send it back to Bill to go fishing. One more. So that's set up with the old school with the sawtooth ratchet is fine. You don't need instant anti-reverse, particularly on a lighter reel like this. That anti-reverse situation is fine there. Going to put the block in, and then the last thing we'll do is just put that tie down nut, make sure that that's nice and tight and that it has the tie down nut in there. More importantly, what we want to do right now is just make sure that the anti-reverse is working properly. That's a nice smooth reel. You know, these worm drive reels from Shimano really are nice. Make sure that we stop. We do stop. Got a little bit going on here. We're going to put a little bit of oil in each of the seams of the bail. Make sure that the bail flips, which it does. Last thing then is grab that wrench. I think it was a 12 millimeter, I'm not sure. I'm not sure because I didn't have that wrench. Bill took that off for me. Yep, alright, it was a good thing we grabbed it because I didn't have it tight. So we'll just tighten it and grab that last screw. So while we're doing this, again, a special thanks and shout out to the first responders. We really do appreciate everything you're doing. If you're frontline personnel, regardless of what your capacity is as an emergency responder, a special thanks to you for doing what you're doing. I hope I'm keeping you entertained here in your off hours, kind of an odd way to keep entertained, but if it takes your mind off of the horror show that this pandemic has become, then I'm grateful and glad that to do that for you. And we'll just test the anti-reverse override. We can spin backwards, spin forward, lock in. That's it. So that was the project of the day. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you did, please like it and subscribe if you would like to see more of these. If you're a first responder, I am offering to service a reel of your choice at no charge. Please contact me by way of the business card that follows this. If you have a reel project and you either feel that you're not capable of doing that or you don't want to do that, I do repair reels by mail, so contact me by that same business card. The email is preferred, and I'll get you the information on the service practices and how to do that as well. So this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Thank you for watching.